emphasize that please do not switch on your mics. Mute your mics, as it's going to interfere with the speaker while they're trying to address all of us. And I'll also request that if you have any question, wait for the presenter to complete and then we will attend to your questions. Or if you feel you're going to forget your question, you can write it in the chat box. Also state your student number there, or you can write just the question in the chat box. But if you want us to attend it on another platform, you can email it to us. And don't forget to mention, to state your student number in the subject head, so that we'll be able to track you and also be able to engage with you further. And if it's possible, use your My Life account when you email us, and any other account, but our official account is your My Life account, so that we'll be able to recognize that you are a UNISA student. For now, I think I've stated all the rules. To those who have just joined in, you are all welcome. I saw Mr. McDonald joining in, Mr. Mulepo. You are all welcome, our lovely student, and we hope that we are going to have a fruitful engagement like the last one. For now, I'll hand over to Advocate Sianeo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Bai, for welcoming all of us. We now feel comfortable and welcomed. And good morning to all our students on the platform. Like we indicated in the previous session, these sessions are meant to allow all of you to be able to engage with us. And I know you're writing in 2 days' time. Am I correct? In 2 days' time, 1st of July. I believe that you're all ready. Those that are still doing the final touches are just final touches to get all well prepared. Ms. Pai, that slide, can just share that slide. Thank you. For some reason, I don't know why it's not big enough just to fill the screen. But in any case, I hope everyone will be able to see the slide. Yeah, thank you. Today, we decided to focus on Study Guide 2. I think in our previous engagements, we covered a lot in Study Guide 1. So today we decided to cover the Study Guide 2, which is the law of Estoppel. Before I go any further, because I want this session to be interactive, I'll start with a question. When we talk about law of Estoppel, what does then come to your mind? What comes to your mind when we talk about the law of Estoppel? Can anyone just share with us what they understand when we talk about the law of Estoppel? You can just raise your hand and then we'll recognize you. What is the law of Estoppel? What does the law of Estoppel deal with? Anyone? I see
Advocate,
there are
yeah.
2 hands. Ms. Bai, you
Okay.
can just recognize them.
Delicia, you can go first.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure whether I'm going to get it completely right, but if I think of Estoppel, then to me, it's if somebody is telling a lie and you perceive it to be true, then you would use the Estoppel. So I'm not sure if that is the correct, but that's what I think if I think of Estoppel.
Thank you.
For your
Thank you so much.
contribution. Advocate, do we also allow Mr. Mudau to comment or
Yes.
okay, thank you. Mr. Mudau can go next time.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. I think Estoppel happens in a case where one takes a decision based on misrepresented facts, and then that leads to financial loss coming from that misrepresentation.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for your response. You are right. So Estoppel applies in instances where there's a misrepresentation. So there must be a misrepresentation, but that will touch on, we'll explain it later on when we look at the requirements for Estoppel. But you are correct. Estoppel is a defense. It's a defense that it can be used in instances where there was a misrepresentation and somebody relying on that misrepresentation acted to their own detriment. So it's a defense. I wanted to look at that slide. I don't know, Ms. Pike.
It's not showing, Advocate.
No, it disappeared.
Oh, let me try again.
But yeah, that's the law of Estoppel. So the law of Estoppel deals, it's a defense that applies in instances where there's a misrepresentation. Therefore, there must be a misrepresentation in the first. A lie, correct, because misrepresentation means that you are presenting false information as if that information is true or correct. There we go. So the law of Estoppel, South African law of Estoppel, has been influenced by English law. So the origin and the development of this law has had its influence from English law. In that development, I think I'll touch briefly on this one. You will not be examined on this part, but I just want to just briefly touch on it so that it gives you have an idea of how this law of Estoppel developed. It developed and got an influence from English law, particularly where in English law, initially there were 3 forms or types of Estoppel that were identified. The first one was by way of records, meaning that whatever has been stated in a particular records, especially during the rule of the king in English law, whatever has been drafted by the king could not be. It was taken as it is, so everybody can then rely on that on those documents or records. And the second one was by matter in writing. The same with it is similar to what I've just mentioned there with the documentation. And the last one was by transfer of land. I think all of these have a similarity in the fact that these are illegal documents. So if somebody presents these documents and then there was an assumption that those documents were correct, therefore everybody else would be allowed to rely with confidence on those documents. That's when the law of Estoppel developed. It developed in that way, where whoever relied on those documents could then be the contents of those documents would be taken as true. So its history dates back to the 1976. 1766, and that's how it developed in English law, and eventually came and got adopted in South African law. So the basis of this law, when you look at the constitutional values that we have, the constitutional imperatives, relies also on fairness, that somebody who misrepresent, like we said initially, when there's a misrepresentation and somebody relies on that misrepresentation as true, and then that person can then rely on the defense of Estoppel. So the basis of this is on equity as well as fairness. If you misrepresent, we'll look at it later on when there's a misrepresentation, and based on that misrepresentation, somebody acts to their own detriment. Therefore, that person should be, by law, allowed to stop the other party from relying on the true facts. So that's the basis of our law of Estoppel. Can we move to slide 2? So the basis of fairness, reasonableness as well, can be found in the principle of Ubuntu as well. So that's the constitutional imperative that has there. So these are the requirements for Estoppel. So for one to rely on Estoppel, these 5 requirements must be met. So if one of the requirements cannot be met, then the party cannot rely on Estoppel. Like we said initially, the law of Estoppel applies in instances where there's a misrepresentation, and as a result of that misrepresentation, the other party acts to their own detriment, and therefore that person can then stop the other party. Stop simply means you stop the other party from relying on the true facts. Remember, when you make a misrepresentation, it means the misrepresentation is false. The information that you are giving is not correct. Therefore, you cannot there at a later stage argue that the information that you gave is incorrect and rely on the true facts. So these are the general requirements for Estoppel. If you want to rely on Estoppel, these 5 requirements must be met. So as you're going to be writing your exam in 2 days' time, it is critical that you must know these requirements, because all the questions that will come in the exam will revolve around these 5 requirements. So we'll start briefly with the first one. I'll just briefly touch on the first one, which is misrepresentation. I believe most of us here have done law of contract or law of delict. So the same definition of misrepresentation that we find in law of delict or in law of contract applies here. So somebody must have presented false facts as if those false information is correct. So there are two ways to make a misrepresentation. The first one is by commission, and the second one is by omission. Misrepresentation by commission is by expressly stating these facts or stating the information to the other party. So you're telling the other party that this is the position. You're expressly telling the other party. So that is by commission. But misrepresentation can also be committed by omission. By omission, it simply means you fail to act, or you fail to, in these instances, you fail to remove the misrepresentation which is there. But by legally, this applies in instances where you are legally bound to remove the misrepresentation or impression that the other party has. For example, if one party, you have lost or you have been a victim of a crime, and then somebody stole your car, and some point when you go to the auction, you see your car being auctioned. The reasonable thing to do will be to raise that issue that this is your car. If you fail to do that, then the car can get sold. You had a duty, a legal duty, to indicate that the car that was being sold there is your car. So by doing that, you are misrepresenting by omission. You failed to indicate or remove the impression, whichever it is there. So that's the first requirement, which is misrepresentation. So therefore, there must be a misrepresentation. Somebody must tell a lie, must expressly state the facts which are not correct, or fail to act to remove the wrong impression that the other party has. The second requirement is fault. It goes back to law of contract as well, of delict or criminal law. The same definition that we gave to fault applies here. So fault has two elements. The first one is intention or intent. The second one is negligence or culpa. So in this, for the law for Estoppel, the element of fault that is required generally is negligence. When you look at the nature of the defense, so somebody, if you intentionally misrepresent, it is easy to prove fault. But in many instances, somebody is negligent in presenting the facts or without checking the facts, and eventually those presentation becomes a misrepresentation. So there must be fault on the part of the Estoppel denier. Thirdly is prejudice. So the other party must suffer prejudice. The other party must suffer a loss. And I think Mashudu mentioned that they must have suffered some financial loss. That's correct. So that is one form of prejudice. That's one form to indicate that somebody has suffered prejudice as a result of misrepresentation. And the fourth requirement is causation. So there must be a causal link. There must be a link between the misrepresentation and the prejudice and the loss that the other party has suffered. So for you to be successful in relying on Estoppel on this defense, you need not only just prove that there was misrepresentation and therefore you suffered a loss. You must indicate that your loss was caused by the misrepresentation. So there must be that causal link between misrepresentation and your loss. And finally, it's permissible in law. So whatever you are stopping the other party, whatever you are stopping the other party from relying, must be permissible in law. So in actual fact, estoppel means that somebody may have made a representation and want to stop that person from relying on the true facts. But if you want to stop that person, whatever you're stopping him or her must be permissible in law. I'll explain this by using an example. The municipality, for example, I think this will be relevant to all of us. For example, the municipality makes a misrepresentation. They don't check their facts correctly. They send you a bill that you owe this much. And you pay. Later on, when they do the recalculation, they realize that when they were doing the calculation, they made a mistake. Therefore, you owe more than what they billed you. That I can rely on.
Please mute your mic.
In those circumstances, one may argue that I might potentially have a defense in Estoppel by stopping the municipality from claiming more than what they have billed me initially. Because remember, there was a misrepresentation from the municipality by telling me that I owe them 1,000 rand, while in fact I owe them 50,000 rand. So they did not check their facts, but they communicated to you or to me that I owe them 1,000 rand. That's the first requirement, which is misrepresentation. So therefore, there's a misrepresentation. The second requirement is there as well. There's fault. The municipality was negligent by not checking their facts. Therefore, the second requirement is met. Clearly, there's prejudice. The party might argue that when I got the bill from the municipality, I was told that I owe only 1,000 rand. And then I paid, and then I used the other money that I had for other things under the impression that I only owed to the municipality 1,000 rand. So when they come later on and they say they made a mistake, now I owe them 50,000, I will suffer prejudice because now I have to change and I will have to readjust my budget in those instances. So you have suffered a prejudice. It's a financial prejudice on the part of the party. So you can argue that there's a prejudice on his part. Thirdly, there's a causation. The prejudice has been caused by that misrepresentation by the municipality. But the problem in this circumstance that I'm giving you is that it must also be permissible. Remember, if you are stopping the municipality, you are stopping them to say, initially you said, I owe you 1,000 rand. Now you say, I owe you 50,000. I stop you from saying that I owe you 50,000, we take it as if your misrepresentation, which was I owe you 1,000 rand, as true. Therefore, I stop you from relying on the true fact. The true fact is that I owe the municipality 50,000, but I want to stop the municipality from relying on the true facts. But in this instance, remember, the last requirement of Estoppel is that whatever you are stopping them must be permissible in law. Remember, municipality collect these rates by law. They have to collect these rates. So if you are stopping them from collecting these rates and taxes, you are forcing the municipality not to do something that is permissible in law. So what you are forcing them to do, you are forcing them to do something that is not permissible in law. Therefore, your defense of Estoppel will not succeed. So those are the 5 requirements. I hope you understand the last one. I think the other 4 requirements, if you have done law of contract, I assume most of us have done law of contract. So if you have done law of contract or law of delict, the first 4 requirements, you have come across them. So you might understand how they operate, how they get to be applied in a factual scenario. But the last one, I think, is the one that you might be encountering for the first time, that what is permissible in law? It simply means that whatever you are stopping the other party to do must be permissible in law. So you cannot stop the municipality from doing its job in terms of legislation. You cannot stop for example, SARS from collecting taxes, because they do that and they are allowed by law to do that. So whatever you are stopping them must be permissible in law. So these are the 5 requirements that you have to meet for your reliance on Estoppel to succeed. It's critical. So as you prepare for your exam,